109876. There's audio through the Mac. That's what we're going to do.
Okay, fine.
All right.
Do you want to try the share one more time?
No.
Okay.
109876 4 3 2 1. I'm just waiting to see if the chat is hearing us now. Someone in the chat give me an indication. I am just going to get started again. So I was saying, huge thanks to Laura from the Oxford Exchange for hosting us here. I just wanted everyone out there to hear this. The Oxford Exchange, perhaps the coolest bookstore we have been to. If you're in Tampa, please check it out. And here we go. So as they say in the UFC. On the way over here, I have some financial angst in my life. So Karm immediately started talking about some bills I need to take care of. I said, please don't talk to me. And then I brought up the war that's escalating in Israel. Karm says, I don't want to talk about the war in Israel. She said, please don't talk to me. So we decided to just stay silent for the car ride. So people accuse us of being shtick. This is not shtick. This is really Karm and I. We've been on the road a long time, so we are feeling the effects of one another on each other. Karm couldn't help herself, so at lunch today, which Oxford Exchange was kind enough to actually bring us up here to eat, Karm's new obsession is that I eat too fast. She said, have you always eaten this quickly? And I said, I don't know. I don't really monitor how quickly I eat. And that turned into a story about her own mother, who was the first to be fed in her nursing home in Switzerland and the last to finish her meal, to which I said, I really don't care. So that was our most recent conversation. That is a look into...
I'm trying to educate him still.
Yes, she thinks that eating too quickly is bad for my health. And then totally unsolicited, she started to tell me about someone in her building whose cancer is getting worse, and now they look horrible, and they don't know how much time is left. So these are the ancillary worries that Karm likes to give me while I'm worrying about everything else. So that is just a glimpse into the life of myself and my mom. As you know by now, we host the true crime podcast, Surviving the Survivor, which has the best guests in all of true crime. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. By the way, we did Fox News in Tampa was kind enough to interview Karm and I on Wednesday before we left the studio. She asked if she could watch herself. Friday. I never watch myself. I actually haven't. People have been saying things to me about the book. I have not read the book since it's been out. I'm just very superstitious. I don't like to. I'm too afraid to read the book. But I'm getting some. She's read it 1,000 times. Because she loves to hear about herself. And
oh my, that's nasty.
That's not nasty. So I took a little poll before we went live on the podcast. What we're going to do is just talk for about 25, 30 minutes, and then we'll take your guys' question. And we'll do sort of, a mix of my mom's story combined with true crime and even the Karen retrial, which is set to go to the jury this week. It's been an unbelievable trial. Mainly because I've never gotten the amount of, I get nice email too, but just incredibly disgusting hate mail and hate tweets. So I haven't really asked my mom about that, and she's a licensed therapist, so I do want to ask her about it. But people, this is the longest Karm hasn't said anything, so I'm getting nervous. But Karm, what do you think of this story?
Okay, first of all, for those of you, I don't know how many people, can I just give a very, very brief historic rundown of us?
Yes.
How did it start? We all had the COVID threat, and they locked us down in Miami. And I was sitting there in the apartment with my husband, who wasn't well already and needed a full-time nurse. And Joel called me up one day in 2020 and asked me if I would like to start a podcast with him. And I immediately said yes. I didn't think a minute. And my husband encouraged us to do it. And we started weekly podcasts, enjoyed tremendously just getting out and getting in the car with Joel and going over to the recording studio. And that's how it started. And we had no orientation. We were kind of doing everything under the sun. whoever we could get to be interviewed, we would interview them. And it happened so that we did find some very interesting people who we interviewed.
One of them was Dr. Avi Loeb, who's a Harvard astrophysicist. This is way before true crime. And at that point, I've told the story before, so forgive me if you've heard this, but at that point, I was trying to build a podcast and I was asking for people's help to help plug the podcast. And Karm screamed at me before we went on air. She said, starting today, you don't ask for anything. You ask them how we can help them. So I said, Dr. Loeb, how can we help you? He's a Harvard astrophysicist. He said,
full professor.
He said, there's actually a movie being made about his book, Extraterrestrial, and I think it's going to star Brad Pitt. But he said, well, I need $150 million for a telescope. And I looked at my mom and I said, never give me that advice again. He was dead serious. I think he thought that since I had been in news, I think he was kind of serious. Then, of course, we had Carol Baskin on, who's in a weird way an inspiration for this book. Karm was calling it Lion King, the show, to her face instead of Tiger King. And that's when we knew that just general interviews were probably not the way to go. Shout out to Steve Cohen, our producer, who kind of directed us to a story out of South Florida and North Florida, which is the Dan Markel murder. And we started doing that story. We're both really intrigued by it. And that's how we got into true crime. And that's where we've stayed. And proud to say that in basically 17 months, we've grown to 115,000 subscribers. And the highest month we've had was just shy of 3 million views.
And we were advised.
Thank you. So
we were advised early on that we should not be like all over the place. If we
like
want to
like we are today.
We should like focus. So we slowly with the Markel case, we started to focus more on true crime. Unwittingly, we walked into it, so to speak, and it turned out from a psychological perspective, and he having been a junkie before for true crime, it really worked out okay. So far, so good.
And I just want to say, by the way, hello to everyone on the live chat. People are tuning in from around the world to watch this, so we appreciate you. So let's just dive right into it. You know, the book has the same title as a podcast, but it's totally different. The book was inspired in a very weird way by Carol Baskin, not completely, but Carol Baskin said to me, your mom is like my beloved tiger. She's an endangered species, which she is. There's only 285,000 Holocaust survivors left in the entire world. Half of those live in Israel, and they're dying at an alarmingly fast rate. Sorry, Mom, not you. But no, they are
the ones who are still alive are not all well.
They're not all well. And so there's relatively very few. So she said that to me. I worked for Michael Moore, the documentary filmmaker, all the way back in 1999. He cautioned me to do something. And I don't know, there was just a fire that burned inside of me to tell my mom's story, which I say is the most important story that I've reported on. But I love the book Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom. And I heard he was going to be at the Miami Book Fair, and I dragged Karm there. We weren't allowed to speak to him, and I snuck us through security and told, because his new book's about a Holocaust story. Long story short, we got through security, and I told the police officer to tell Mitch Albom that my mom's a survivor. Next thing you know, we were talking to him. So he wrote a blurb for the book, and the book is fashioned after Tuesdays with Maury, except for sales so far. I'd like to get to 17 million sales, but that's a whole other story. So it's the #1 memoir of all time, but it's basically like 10% my mom's Holocaust story, maybe 20%, and the rest is life advice. And if you haven't figured it out, those are my 3 kiddos right there. But so it's basically life advice from my mom, who ruins the entire book, because at the end she's like, why the hell are you asking me these questions? You don't learn anything. I don't know anything more at 85 than I knew when I was 25. So she basically ruins the book for everyone at that point. But Karm, she was saved by righteous Gentiles, people who were not Jewish. One was a doctor in town, and then a nun who hid her in a Catholic school. We've kind of gone over this in other shows. Is there something that we haven't heard, Karm, that you would like to share? Or do you want to pick up what happened at that point?
Well, I learned the book, first of all, I'm sidetracking. The book actually has to do with the podcast. We mentioned the podcast. We virtually have a chapter on the podcast because it's now part of a very important part of all our lives, including even the children. We are all into the podcast. Sometimes Joel does the podcast literally from his own house. And in the book we mentioned the podcast, which is important to us. But the Holocaust part, I learned not to. It's in the book in detail, but I learned to kind of make it telegraphic. Not to use a whole 30 minutes describing what happened to him when I was 5. I happened to be a very precocious 5, but still I was only 5. And since then, I've lived for another 80 years. I'll be 85 in August of this year. So the point is that the Holocaust, while it dominates our psychology, I think in some way, in a very strange way, it's always there, especially these days with upsurge in problems for the Jews. It influences us. In spite of that, that's not the main thrust of this book. The main thrust of this book is a little different than that. So if you are okay, I'll tell you in a telegraphic form just what happened one particular morning in June 18th, 1944. I was with my mother, father, grandmother, grandfather in the ghetto in this small town, which, by the way, is in the book. The small town where I was born is in the book. It's an epilogue to the book because before we finished the book, we took a trip, all of us, my daughter-in-law, grandchildren, we all went to my hometown. At that time, we were in my hometown in the ghetto. I don't know if everybody's familiar with the concept of the ghetto. They took all the Jews out of the town and they put them in a neighborhood near the freight train station because they knew that very shortly they would pile everybody back into cattle cars and take them to the gas chambers in Poland. That was the plan. The reason they were in a hurry, the Nazis, was because in some parts of Europe by that time were liberated, and they saw the handwriting on the wall that this, after the invasion at Normandy, which I'm sure we all know about, and the Americans came to rescue Europe, the war was very close to an end, so they had to kill as many Jews as possible. When the Jews got to Auschwitz from these trains, automatically they were triaged. Today there is an accident, you triage people. There they would take in one lane, they would take all mothers with little children and older women and older men, and on the other people who were looked like they could still serve and work, and they wouldn't immediately send them to the gas chambers. The gas chambers were like showers that they put on the shower, and poison gas would come out of the shower and they would die. I don't know. I didn't study it. I didn't read up on it. But anyway, they took immediately my father and grandfather into the gas chambers automatically the minute they got off the trains, and they killed them. My mother, when they came in the morning to take us from the to the trains, my mother, they came in and they said that these were Hungarian Nazis, and they said, take out your money and take out your jewelry, put them on the table, pack up a little suitcase, you are going away. We will be back in an hour or so to take you to the train station, to the freight train station. They didn't even say freight, they just said train station. My mother and grandmother decided and that they are not going to the train station. My mother grabbed my hand and through a door in the back of the garden, she literally walked with me out of the ghetto and started walking. That's how I survived. She started walking and walked over to a Gentile friend from the teacher's college where she knew her. This was a friend of hers who lived outside of the ghetto. My mother walked over there, knocked on this woman's window. She opened her door. She saw what the situation was. My mother said, "We have to go to this eye doctor because he can help us. But I'm afraid I'll be recognized. It's a small town. It was a small town. Picture if you lived in a town with 100,000 people, but with a small center. That's where we live. And there was a danger that that she would be recognized. So this friend came with her, took her to the eye doctor. Why the eye doctor? Because my father's business was he learned how to chisel eyeglasses. And he went to school for that. And he worked together with the Gentile Ivo Scherzer, the eye doctor. And the doctor was a righteous, very religious Catholic. And he said, "Anytime I can help you, you can count on me." And this stuck in my mother's mind. And she knocked on his door. He knew that he could be murdered instantly or sent to a concentration camp, but he opened the door. He let my mother and me in. And the rest of it, you want to read it in the book?
Let me hop in for one quick second. There's a little more to go, but Judah, come here. J Mac. So my mom was younger than he is right now, just to give you perspective. He's 5 years old. He just turned 5.
Yeah, but I wasn't the youngest of 3.
She always has to correct me, even when I'm giving factual information. So she was younger than Judah. Okay, now you can go back to your sister. But she was younger than he is right now, which is just, I mean, that really puts in perspective.
I was a little old lady because I was for a long time with my mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, no other children.
Yeah. By the way, Laura from Oxford Exchange said, "Are you sure you're going to have enough to say?" And I was like, with Karm and I, we can talk for 9 hours, but we're going to go for like, I don't know, 20 more minutes, and then we'll take questions till the bottom of the hour if you have them. But my mother said something to her mother that I put in the book that really stuck with me, and that is that
I don't think you put it in the book.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did, because I read the book. She said that she said to her mother that a mother who loves her child, you tell the story.
Oh, I thought you meant the quote that I thought.
By the way, there's a general speaking here tomorrow. I think he's going to be a little more disciplined and buttoned up than us when it comes to this. But go ahead, Karm. Tell us that story. Stay focused.
No, I thought you were the mention that I said to my mother years and years and years ago that she gave birth to me twice. Once when she actually gave birth to me, and the second time when she walked out of me with the, from the back of the car.
Yeah, because you didn't tell me that line until after I was done writing the book.
That's true.
So that's not in there.
True.
That's not why it's not it. But she said.
I can't think of
But you said to your mother, a mother that loves.
No. This is what happened.
Oh boy.
No, but this
is every day. By the way, this COE, does this happen in the minivan? Yes or no? Is it worse? It's worse in the minivan. I hate when people accuse us of making this up for entertainment. It's not. I wish it wasn't, but it is. Go ahead, Karm.
I am a terrible. Anyway, but were we talking about that?
Your mother drops you off and you scream at her, much like you scream at me. What did you say to her?
Dr. Scherzer was the benefactor of some nuns in a nunnery not far from his house. And he went over there and he had this idea of leaving me with these nuns. And when he got there, he told the nuns who I was. He didn't lie. The nuns knew the risk and they accepted me. But they said, "Come over dark when it's dark out because I don't want the neighbor to see anything." And allegedly, according to my mother and Dr. Scherzer, when we got there in the evening, they just opened there was a big door, Joel, so in this last summer, a big door on this nunnery. The door opened, a nun was standing there waiting for me. They pushed me in and they closed the door, and I screamed. A mother who loves her child will not leave her with strangers. That is in the book, by the way.
That's in the book. And you asked her about that. She felt bad about it, right? Years
she
later.
felt very, very bad. And then I told her that literally she gave me birth twice.
Yeah. This is when my grandmother was eating very slowly at the nursing home.
The same grandmother.
So let's we're gonna just pivot here a little bit, and then I'll we'll get to questions. But so the true crime thing, I actually have always been intrigued by true crime. I was always into. I was one of these guys that watched Dateline just all the time, and we kind of fell into it. But why have you found true crime to be so interesting?
I'm a sucker for psychology. Like, I analyze things. Why did this person do this, or why did this person do that? Even with Karen Reed, I think it's not sufficient to discuss this particular case that we are going to mention, if she did it or she didn't do it. Let's try to understand her as a person with a background, with a family. Who is she? What happened to her? Because there are other things that bother me about Karen Reed, regardless of this particular tragedy that happened later. It bothers me. All other things bother me.
But in general, what do you? So Karm is a licensed therapist. So when I was growing up, my dad was a psychiatrist. May he rest in peace. My dad was the yin to her yang. My dad was very level-headed, very soft-spoken, smart and funny, but very quiet. And he would always tell my mom, this is when I was 9, 10 years old, they would do couples therapy. My dad would see the wife or the husband. My mom would see the wife. My dad would see the parents, and my mom would see the kids. Well, my dad would always say to my mom, Carmela, don't you dare give out our phone number. Back then, you'd give out a phone number. But Karm always wanted to help people. My dad was all business. And then I would answer the phone, and I'd hear, your dad's an asshole. And scream. And I would say, I knew some of these patients' names back then. I think the statute of limitations has run out. So let's just say her name is Florence.
No, don't.
Florence.
Say.
She was a 4'11" Filipina. And she would be like, your dad's up. So I go, Mom, here. And then my dad would chime in and say, Carmela, I can't believe you gave out the number. He's like, so they would go back and forth. But as long as I can remember, my mom was always helping people. I mean, in the true crime world, there's obviously a lot of people attracted to it because they themselves are victims. But what has attracted you to it?
I have a master's in social work, and then I took extra courses after the master's. And again, I think I was curious about people. I'm a very people person, as you may notice. And so I was always fascinated by behavior, and crime is behavior. And I don't even pretend to know the legal part. That's why we have the best guests who are the legal experts. But I try to say what I think and what my opinion is. And opinions I have galore.
For those of you who don't know, the Karen Reed trials is next to the O.J. Simpson case, probably the most divisive trial this country has seen in many, many years. And it's taking place in Boston right now. Yeah, I'm gonna fill you in right now a little bit. So Karen Reed was dating a police officer named John O'Keefe, and they were all John O'Keefe and Karen Reed were out, and it was a night that a blizzard was falling on Canton, Massachusetts, which is a suburb of Boston. It was this true story, obviously, January 29th, 2022. And there's a bunch of law enforcement officers, they tend to hang out together. So there was another Boston police officer, an ATF agent, and nephews and cousins, and everyone was incredibly drunk. Karen Reed is said to have had between 7 and 9 drinks. Well, John O'Keefe, this Boston police officer, he ends up dead in the driveway of this home in Canton, Massachusetts. And no one really knows what happened. So months later, Karen Reed is arrested and she's charged with second-degree murder and involuntary manslaughter. She's said to have run him over in reverse and killed him. Well, there's a very well-known blogger who kind of took this story from the very, very onset, named Turtle Boy, and many people follow him closely. Many people find him repulsive. He himself ended up in jail for witness intimidation, but the story just became this crazy, sensationalized, set of events out of Canton, where now half the people basically believe that Karen Reed is guilty. I would say it's less than half now. And many more believe that it's what they call a Canton conspiracy, that these law enforcement officers that night got into some sort of altercation with John O'Keefe and killed him in a fight. No one really knows. Long story short, it's going to a jury this week, and there's going to be a verdict handed down. And many people think that she's going to walk. Many people think she has nothing to do with it. Many people think that these police officers are all responsible. But the one thing that I can tell you for sure is that the trial has brought out the worst in people. It has both sides, kind of like what we see in politics in our country. It has the so-called free Karen Readers and the people who think that Karen Reed did it at each other's necks, including people yelling at me. So my question to you is, why is it so divisive?
Well, I think this is my take. He never asked me this before. I think that the country is so polarized politically and polarized, period. And this is like just a little mini show of the same polarization. Because let's face it, we are curious about true crime, but we really have no power. It's the jury based on legal facts that will decide the outcome. But people are willing to die for their side of the story. And unfortunately, some of them are willing to murder Joel if they feel that he stepped off the middle line, one way or another way. And he has no power in this situation. He just is telling you about the situation, telling you the story, but he has no power. And I think that what makes it more difficult is because people cannot let go. That's human nature. Once you think the justice is on your side and you are right, it's like families, like husbands and wives. It's very hard to just have a dialogue on every level.
So in the courtroom this past week, just a little backstory. John O'Keefe, who is the person who was found dead, his sister died of a brain tumor, and her husband, his brother-in-law, then died of a massive heart attack, coincidentally, a few months later. So those kids lost both their parents. So then John O'Keefe took custody of the kids. So the O'Keefes, and he ended up dead. So those kids have been through the most unimaginable nightmare ever. I mean, I always say there's 7 billion people on this planet now, and everyone's got a story to tell. Well, those kids have an unbelievable story to tell. So just to show you what it's like in the Twitter sphere and the kind of, I get emails all the time. Oh, you're exploiting your mother, which drives me crazy, because it's like,
because I exploit
number
him.
One, she's my mother. Yeah. I'm bringing this woman fame and something to do late in life. She's doing all the rounds on TV with me. But so I posted a photo of John. There was a very tight camera shot of John O'Keefe's mother while they were talking about his autopsy, and they were literally talking about slicing his brain matter. And she just looked like she was going to, like a mother would look, right? And so this is what people tweeted back at me. Vicky, I'm naming names here. Rumor has it she talked worse to her own son. Is it possible she's finally hearing herself? Shame on you, Mom. This is how nasty people are. And then she says that we're exploiting a woman who was conned by her son. The real killer are the McAlberts. and then go on to tell me
The
my
Calverts are the policemen who live in the house,
Yeah,
right?
yes, they go on to tell me that I'm grifting off of book sales on my mother. Then the next one says, I'm bringing this up for a reason. I want to ask my mom about this. Really, Joel? He was playing games with her, meaning John O'Keefe with his mother. You're going to get flack for posting this. What about feelings for Karen? She wasn't even the kid's mother. She was good to them, and John looks like he took advantage of her. And then another one says she should be ashamed of how John treated Karen. So they're going after the dead guy. Karm, this is as low as it gets. I don't care about people coming after me, but no matter which side of the Karen Reed debate you're on, they crossed the line. Why? What's going on here?
People are like that. That's all I can say to you. Nobody, I always said to my children, right, when you were growing up, nobody is perfect, but some people are less than not perfect. They are very not perfect. They don't know when to stop or where to stop. And that's human nature too, you know, especially if you're part of a mob or a group or affiliated to something. And now there is a whole movement, you know, of people who are for Karen and a whole movement of people who are against Karen. So I think they're feeling as, I remember 100 years ago, I took a sociology class and they were talking about groups, the in-group and the out-group, you know, and the out-group is the mortal enemy and the in-group is where you belong. It also has something to do on a very, very deep level. This I'm saying to cheer you all up. It has to do with our mortality. Because like this, if you are focused on those other people who are evil, you don't have to deal with yourself and your own mortality or your own human condition. And it happens all the time. And there are, what I love most about true crime also, besides the psychological aspect, I love the rules that you have to follow in a trial. You know, it's like almost like you could compare it to baseball. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
it's very, very regimented.
very regimented, very much based on the law, and very strict. You cannot react with emotions here. You cannot change the facts because you don't like the facts. The facts remain the facts. And I think that's what we see on trials, that people are, I mean, what are we doing on the outside? We are just watching, like when you watch a tennis game, or you, what?
No, exactly.
We are the outside observers of this, that what's playing out in the trial.
Sandra Mayhew is in our chat. She said, Karm is so wise. We cannot put a value on the wisdom of our parents. How blessed you are to spend time with her. Yes, it is. I am blessed, even though there are moments. There's certain moments.
You're a little less blessed.
There's moments where I want to veer the minivan off the road. But anyway, into Alligator Alley. So it's, you know, it's been an amazing experience. I just want to say that in the world where it's all Taylor Swift and other celebrities, I like Taylor Swift, but I think more people should be learning about their own. What I want to inspire people to do is look into their own families, their own family history. My mom is my role model. I hope I'm my kids' role models. She's who I look up to. I don't look up to, I can enjoy Taylor Swift, but I don't look up to Taylor Swift. I've learned by now that you never really know who someone is till you know them. But I know my mom. I know she's an incredibly wise person. I know she thinks I eat too quickly. Karm, do you have a final? And then we're going to take questions for the remaining 15 minutes. But a final pearl of wisdom for.
I like that Karm that you described. Can I meet her?
Yeah. Any pearl of wisdom?
I don't. That's it. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have a pearl of wisdom. No, I think that.
Now she's going to go on for 20 minutes.
Being a social worker, I remember I had a neighbor, Marilyn Lerner.
Yes, I do.
And she said to me one day, you are so lucky that you can help people, because I was a social worker and I tried to help people. That's all you can do, help others. And by the way, that makes you feel better. makes me feel better. If I can do something, it's really a weird paradox. You try to do for somebody else and they make you feel better.
Speaking of that, Misdemeanor OG, who I met at CrimeCon, she's in the chat right now. She says, I was reading your book at the beach this morning. So honest. What a great book. The one thing the book is, it is very honest. I don't hold back at all. It's definitely not your typical Holocaust story. If you guys enjoy it, please, the best gift you can give Karm and I, like I said, it's the most important story that I've ever reported on. Please share it with friends, because we're constantly, I'm trying to think, how do I get this story to the most people? And the only way to really do it is have people share it with other people. But books are power. We know Florida has I saw, we happened to be staying right where the Pride Parade went through yesterday in St. Pete, right past us. And a guy was wearing a shirt that said, live life the way, Florida would ban a book about it. That's what it said. That's what it said. So I thought that was hilarious. And I guess Ron DeSantis wasn't there. I don't think he'd be too. But any questions, please don't be shy. It's your one time in person. Shout out to Jenny Price, who's got the first question.
Just a little bit further, what do you think it is about this particular trial? Because even people who like to and watch all the trials, watch all the things, this is just a particular case when there's so many to choose from. What about it made it so nice to you?
I think one of the interesting things is that turtle boy. No, wait a second. You need one person with a very loud megaphone to create a loud noise, which he did. And then other people begin to pay attention and they are attracted to it. And then you have the group already, the group that's forming, that is on one side. And I think this is a picture of these powerful policemen on one hand, and this vulnerable little woman. That's how she looks when she's sitting there, right?
Yeah. There's also no doubt that there's something being covered up. So it's not like
and
it's not an empty cry.
Like there is something out there.
For those who haven't followed it, the police officers involved in this, one of them tore his SIM card up. There was a series of butt dials. There were definitely, they sold the home right after this incident happened. They gave away their dog. There's a thought that maybe the dog attacked John O'Keefe. So there are so many things here that are mysterious and no one really knows. Yeah. It's been revealed. Yeah. That's 100% really bad. Yeah. Is that people feel like this could be us? This could be you, I could be Karen. Yeah. You know what I mean? And how this works is breaking against it in a way, you know?
Yeah, even if she hit him, the fact that the police did an unbelievable job. They took a rake and went through there was a lot of snow, and they took solo cups and put the evidence in cups, and I mean it's endless. And then what was to me the most interesting and new thing was the fact that when they were showing the car, this Lexus, they showed it reverse. In other words, inverse, the left side was actually the right side, and the right side was actually the left side. It was a mirror image of the position, so that the problematic light was not visible to the naked eye on that reverse photograph. And they never told the court or the police that it was a reverse photograph. And yeah, and you know, listen, we are all we all believe that the police have to take care of us, but then especially I was not so well taken care of by the police when I was really little. In other words, sometimes you are taken very good care of by the police, and sometimes you are not.
Yeah.
Sometimes-
Phoebe in our chat says, unless someone someday gets a guilty conscience later in life, I doubt we will ever know the truth about what happened to John O'Keefe, sadly. And that might be true. Someone I met, was it you that said you have 2 relatives in the IDF? Is there someone here? Someone saw me. Oh, it's you. Who are the relatives?
Wisconsin 3 years ago, was they no longer live as Orthodox Jews 3 years ago. And we now have one grandson that's in the IAF, Air Force, and another that's in the IDF.
What do you mean they couldn't live as Orthodox Jews?
Police told them not to leave their house with the people
In Wisconsin?
they were targets. 3 years ago. So this is not like real new. This is,
Yeah.
Before. But they are thriving in Israel. And interestingly enough, they have a very optimistic view. You think you go someplace, it's a bad neighborhood, thank you very much. But Israel is still the 4th happiest country in the world.
It's true. They did world studies. They did independently of Israel. They ranked countries by happiness, and with this horrible story and everything, the 4th happiest people in the world.
A lot of people have been asking Karm on the road, Jewish people saying, I'm afraid to let my kid wear a yarmulke or a kippah outside. Karm, what's your reaction to hearing that her family had to leave Wisconsin?
Wisconsin is bad.
It's kind of crazy. Any other questions for the wise Karm? Go.
Came to your YouTube show during Charlie Davis,
Yeah.
which is such a mind-blowing case.
Yeah.
The family, it's hard to believe that they set
Yeah.
that up.
Real quick, super quick, for those who do not know that story, Dan Markel went to Harvard undergrad, Harvard Law School. He's a rising scholar. He teaches at FSU, not far from here. He gets murdered in 2014 in his driveway, and it turns out that a hit was put out on him from his in-laws,
Ex-in-laws.
ex-in-laws, and now the ex-mother-in-law, Donna Adelson, is going to go on trial. The ex-brother-in-law is already convicted, but the mother-in-law, who's a little younger than Karm, is sitting in a jail, ironically, in Tallahassee. The whole thing was she wanted them to move from Tallahassee to Miami, and she was really upset that they were staying in Tallahassee. But now she's in jail there, and the son, who basically threw the Latin King gang under the bus, had to be sent to South Dakota to a prison to keep himself protected, just to show you the absurdity of life. So it's kind of crazy, but we've been covering that story, and Grandma Donna goes on trial in September.
So that was my question. Did Donna go on trial?
Yeah.
Because you did such a good job with Charlie case.
He's going to.
Are you going to Tallahassee?
Yes, we're going to Tallahassee. We already have arrangements. Steve Cohn is coming with me, who's my right-hand man, my producer, and we're covering the trial. Oh, yeah, very wealthy family. I'm kind of on both sides, but Charlie Adelson was a traveling periodontist, drove around in a Ferrari, and now he's in, like I said, he basically, it's a very long story, but just the short of it is he blamed the Latin King gang for putting the hit out on his ex-brother-in-law who he hated. And why would the Latin King do anyway? The Latin Kings weren't too happy that they got thrown under the bus, so now they're after Charlie Adelson in prison. It was so bad in Florida that they had to change his identity and move him somewhere in South Dakota. They'll still probably get him.
And we have convicts who are on Joel's show.
That's politically incorrect. They are former inmates. Very interesting guys.
I
really
call
like
a
them.
spade a spade.
I actually really like them.
Yeah.
You're talking about on Karen Reed. Hey, look, the lawyer, the sexiest podcaster alive. he's like the nicest guy. He's getting it. We're all getting it. We're all getting it. Yeah. Ileana and everyone says, don't respond. And I'm like, I'm not responding. Meanwhile, I'm like in a back. I was fighting with this idiot last night. Oh no, thank you so much. Thank you. And I know that, but it is fun to argue with the haters.
I would not argue.
This guy yesterday was cracking me up. He was yelling at me. His name's Orange Kool-Aid Drinker. I'm going to give him the special shout out. So he says I'm exploiting my mom. He says that he'd like to meet me at a book signing. I'm right here, Orange Kool-Aid, right here. And then he says, I have more real estate money than you'll ever have. I drive a Mercedes S580, whatever. I was like, wow, now I know he's a real little man, physically and literally and figuratively. Anyway, another question. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I know about Shira.
Let me tell you our conversation 10 minutes ago when we were eating before this spot. Karm, you planning to go to Israel? Yeah, 100%. What are you going to do if there's a war?
Just before
She
this
goes,
broke out, I was there. It's in the book.
I go, what if there's going to be a war? She's like, I'm not worried about the war. I'm worried about what there's some disease going on now. There's something else going on.
There is
some kind of bird flu. Or
not bird flu.
There's something else.
The Nile.
West Nile. Something.
West Nile, and
I go, wow, that's great for older people.
This is exactly what's happening with the Nile virus. It's totally benign for younger people, and it kills older people.
And then here's the punchline, though. I go, well, let me know when you're going. I want to do a book signing or a few in Israel. She goes, you're not doing any book signing in Israel. No Israeli's going to buy your book. That's what she said to me. Anyway, that's another moment in our life.
There were other parts.
This is just today. These stories I'm sharing are just today. In the back there. Yeah, I can hear you. I hope this is more fun than the general tomorrow. He's going to make everyone sit with their hands on their lap.
What can I do now?
I missed the very end of that.
What can I do now?
You got to raise a real mama's boy. A real mom. I mean, I don't know this is not normal, by the way. This is dysfunctional relationship.
Yeah, we can teach you how to have a dysfunctional relationship.
By the way, I think Karm takes it for granted. I spend a lot of time with her. I think she takes, but Karm, you can answer the question.
In general, not just for your children. I don't know if you will agree with me. If I meet somebody and start to tell them right away what hurts me, what bad thing happened, by the way, that story about somebody having cancer, that was fiction. That was not true. I didn't say that.
Anyway, go ahead.
I said it another time. But in any case,
she's covering up. She doesn't want her neighbor to know.
If you try to deal with life like things will work out, things are good, if you kind of burden the other person, they will avoid you because they don't want to be burdened with more. I don't know when I once listened to a lecture on how to deal with teenagers. That was at the time, I remember, where teenagers refused to cut their hair. So it goes to show you how long ago. And they said, forget about the hair. Don't pay. Just take something that's essential and bug them only about the essential. But don't bug them about everything because they will tune you out.
There you go.
I mean, you have to just make it pleasant. Like empathy, try to get into their skin and see what they are experiencing.
Yeah.
I don't know if is he like Joel, because when Joel was little, he would start every sentence, I feel this, I feel that. And I would say, please don't tell me anymore how you feel. And the mothers would say, I'm so jealous because my kid will never tell me how But this,
Just bribe them with a car or something. I saw another hand or two. It takes two or three more, and then my kids want to. I promised them a very small ending performance since we're a dramatic family.
What perform?
I don't have any idea. Well, now you have to read the book. That's the epilogue. We all go back, including
We went back, and our impressions when we went back.
Yeah,
And
it was-
it's really a small town right on the border of Hungary and now Serbia. We went back. I go back from time to time. I have a half sister. She's there this Monday. She has some relatives from her own father.
It was amazing, by the way, because everything I'd ever heard in my life, I'm 54 now, is totally abstract. And unless I'm very like tactile, even with, news stories, like I used to have to report on some things, from the studio, you don't know what's going on. But whenever you're at a scene, like, being at the Charlie Adelson trial, it gives you a totally different perspective. So going back, they talk about how small the Karen Reed courthouse is. I went there when I was in Boston, so you can see it. But I don't know. I just lost my track.
Subotica was.
Oh, so Subotica was just.
Who is
I always just pictured it as, I don't know, this like just most depressing, horrible, awful Eastern European place where they're eating like bread and water, but it was like this very lively, happening, like town center, beautiful. Karm said you weren't there in the middle of winter, but it was a really cool place, so much that we were posting some photos on Instagram, and the COE's friends are like, oh, I want to go there on a vacation. Like it's a really pretty, quaint place where she's from. Sadly, there was a huge Jewish community there, but after the war, it's gone. The synagogue is a historic landmark. So I have pictures in the book, but
you
it
can
looks like
Google there just to see the structures. Subotica.
it's in the book.
Serbia
But
now.
but it's the synagogue looks like a gingerbread house, something out of a movie. Two more questions. I saw another. Whit, I met him downstairs.
Awesome job.
Thank you.
Thank you. What was
Well,
the question?
what are we looking forward to covering? I mean, without a doubt, it's going to be Donna Adelson, and then we're going to go to Idaho for the Koberger trial, which is going to be scheduled to be next summer. So we'll be there for that, and this is why I enjoy this. It brings it combines my news roots. COE, the camera just shut off, but it combines my news roots. By just, you just don't know what's going to happen, because we're covering trials, but we're also covering breaking news. I mean, there was a crazy story, that manhunt for this guy Danilo Cavalcante, where he was hiding. So we also cover big news stories, and the news stuff, you just never know what's coming your way. So barring any breaking news, it's going to be Donna Adelson for sure. So that's that.
All suggestions are welcome.
I want to get the camera.
Shut it down.
Oh, the COE is working some kind of magic. Any last question before we get our performance?
I'm just trying to comment. And that is, whoever it was that says, it feels so long, that's great. The fact of the matter is, of all the stories you tell, yours is the most important. Because yours is the one that helps understand how you do your work. There is so much misrepresentation going on at the time you were a little girl. People just deny the truth. And we do it still today. And so I really thank you for this book. Thank you for this opportunity to come and meet you. And you are really important. Why all these people are here.
Thank you
Thank you
very
so much.
much.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. And the truth always comes out. So glad you asked that question. So I'm a traditional media guy. I work for all the networks basically, and I get a little glee out of this. They're all dying. We were at Fox and Tampa, and it's like a ghost house. There's just nothing. The traditional media does not know what to do with itself. So the short answer, it's all going towards non-traditional media. And the issue with that is it's going to be up to all of you to decide where you get your information. It used to be it was Walter Cronkite or Tom Brokaw or Peter Jennings. Well, those days are over now. So you have to be smart about where you get the information. What I try to do is kind of be like Larry King was back in the day and bring on the best experts and pick their mind. I always get idiots saying, oh, you don't know anything about these cases. You don't study. I watch these trials. I study them, but I know I'm smart enough to bring on people who are smarter than me to give the analysis. That's why we have the best guests in all of true crime. So thank you all so much. I just want to do a final little dance here, and I couldn't deny them. So come up here, guys. They did this all on their own, by the way. So you know we're from a family of. I did not force them to do this. I did force them to randomly have them sell my book. And this I did not.
No, you cannot do it here because of the fire.
Oh, okay. So this is their big moment. Oh boy. Like an idea of 30 seconds, and then we have to sign books. So hold on, mommy's setting up the camera. Welcome into the Waldman family. Here we go. On 3. 1, 2, 3.
STS Nation is the very best. Make sure to like and follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. STS is the best in the nation. Read the book for your sensation. STS Nation, your sensation.
Judith. And Judith's got to say something.
And smash the subscribe button.
Say it again. Say it again. Say it again.
And smash the subscribe button.
I'm getting tense here. What's he have to say? Tell him. Say it.
I think I really want the best. Thank you.
All right, that's it. Thank you all so much. We're going to sign books. I think we're doing it. We're doing books downstairs, everyone. The general would have rolled his eyes. All right, we'll be downstairs to sign books. All right, kiddos. All right, kiddos.
Thank you.
All right, that's a wrap. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for everything you do behind the scenes.
Thank you.
Mom. You have
So this is what you were
We're going to do this
there. Yeah. Gonna end this show here. Thanks, everyone. We appreciate you guys.